Human behavior is often shaped by the tension between societal expectations and individual desires.
Psychoanalytic theory provides a lens to understand this dynamic, exploring how repression can lead to psychological stagnation and how confronting suppressed instincts can foster personal growth and transformation.
Pleasantville illustrates the psychological transformation of its characters through Freudian and Lacanian theories.
As repressed desires emerge, identities are redefined through self-awareness, and the tension between personal desires and societal expectations is negotiated, ultimately reshaping both individual and collective consciousness.
Welcome to the finale of Inside the Mind, where in this episode we're going to be talking about a beautiful Frenchman by the name of Jacques Lacan.
Where am I? Why am I in black and white? Wait, am I in Pleasantville? Rishi, is that you? What are you doing here? I was just watching you on TV.
You must be LaShawn. It seems like you've been drawn into the discussion. Don't worry, this happens occasionally.
Drawn in? Like the movie Pleasantville. I was just watching it in English class. Does that mean I'm stuck in here?
Not stuck, but immersed. Think of this as an opportunity to truly understand psychoanalysis. You've already made the first step by recognizing the parallels to Pleasantville. Let's explore that. Let's start with the imaginary. Lacan's theory begins with a mirror stage, a critical moment in which the subject first sees themselves in a mirror and recognizes their own reflection. This creates a sense of wholeness, but it is based on an illusion. The child's sense of self is an external image, and the imaginary is the realm of this mirror stage. In Pleasantville, the world is stuck in the imaginary order. It is a perfect, unchanging world, black and white, and full of idealized stereotypes, representing a stage where the individuals are unaware of their desires and complexities.
Like those idyllic sitcoms in the 1950s.
Exactly, like Leave It to Beaver. The black and white imagery in Pleasantville reinforces the sense of an idealized, repressive world, one that seems perfect and harmonious, but is ultimately false and superficial. This world is a prelapsarian state, a term from biblical philosophy that refers to the period before the fall of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Before the fall, humanity is innocent, unaware of their desires, and in a state of idealized purity, much like the town of Pleasantville before David and Jennifer arrived. This is what Lacan would describe as the imaginary, a world constructed around illusions and simple harmony, unaware of the complexity that comes with true human desire.
And when David and Jennifer arrived, they're bringing something into the Pleasantville world that wasn't there before: desire, individuality.
Exactly. Their arrival in Pleasantville introduces repressed desires, sexuality, creativity, and the longing for something beyond the idealized roles that were imposed by the symbolic order. The symbolic is the realm of social structures, rules, and language. In Pleasantville, the town's rigid black and white world is governed by these rules. The men work, the women cook and clean, and everything remains predictable and confined. The rigid order is disrupted when the characters begin to experience desires that they did not know that they had.
And that's where the disruption comes, when they start to break free from these rules.
Exactly. The introduction of desire is like the post-lapsarian condition. After the fall, this is a shift from the world of innocence to one where knowledge and complexity are introduced. In the post-lapsarian state, we are no longer innocent and aware of desire. We are aware of our own desires from the societal expectations that constrain us. In Lacanian terms, this is when the transition from the imaginary to the symbolic takes place. The repression breaks, and the townspeople begin to experience their desires in ways that challenge the societal rules.
So it's a fall from innocence. However, this fall leads to growth and self-awareness.
Precisely. This is where the concept of felix culpa, the happy fall, comes into play. In Christian theology, the fall is seen as a tragic event, but it is also one that brings knowledge, freedom, and personal development. Similarly, in Lacanian theory, the felix culpa is a fall that brings the subject into contact with the real. The real is that which cannot be symbolized. It is the chaotic, unknowable part of existence. It is everything that lies outside of the limits and language of societal norms. In Pleasantville, this chaotic energy is symbolized by the town gradually turning from black and white to color. This transformation represents the introduction of the real, the confrontation with desire, complexity, and individuality.
So this fall that you say, it's necessary for the growth. By breaking free from the repression, the characters move towards the reality, the real.
Exactly. The more the townspeople accept their desires, the more the world becomes colorful, vibrant, and real. The transition from the black and white world to color represents a shift from the static imaginary state to the dynamic symbolic and the real world's color.
It all starts to make sense now. It's all connecting. The color isn't just about breaking the rules, it's about confronting the chaos of the real and finding the freedom through it.
Exactly. And as Lacan would say, the journey into the real is where true transformation begins.
You are about to enter the courtroom of Judge
Mateus Oliveira.
The people are real. The cases are real. The rulings are final. This is Judge
Mateus.
Court is now in session. Today we are here to examine the charges of using defense mechanisms to resist change in the case of the townspeople versus reality. Prosecutor LaShawn, you may present your case.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will prove that Mayor Rishi here and the townspeople of Pleasantville are guilty of using denial and selective perception to avoid facing the truth about their colorful transformation.
Proceed, prosecutor.
Thank you. Now, Mayor Rishi, let's discuss denial. When colors started appearing in your town, how did you feel about it? How did you respond to it?
Well, I mean, I've never seen colors before. It shouldn't be there. Color don't exist. It's always in black and white.
So you do admit to rejecting the reality of the colors.
What reality are you talking about? Colors don't exist.
That, Your Honor, is the textbook example of denial. Denial is a defense mechanism where individuals refuse to accept reality because it's too uncomfortable for them. They don't feel good about it, so they just deny it. The townspeople, led by Mayor Rishi here, rejected the existence of colors to avoid facing the emotional changes they represented.
Denial is a strong accusation. What's your next point?
I'd like to address selective perception, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Mayor Rishi, isn't it true that you refuse to hear arguments or evidence supporting the changes in Pleasantville?
I only listen to what I want to listen to. I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. That is a perfect example of what selective perception is, which is another defense mechanism. By only focusing on information that only aligns with your morals, your ideas, your opinions, your thoughts, you ignore the reality of what others want, what your townspeople want. Maybe some might like it, some may not. You never know, but you're just going about what you want.
But it's always been that way. It's traditionally, we've always had a strict code of conduct. It's never changed. All of a sudden, if everything changes, what do you want me to do?
Well, defense mechanisms like denial and selective perception that we see Mayor Rishi using here may give the illusion of control, but in reality, it only delays progress, it only delays growth, it only delays development. His thought of just denying and resisting change shows that how you prevented the townspeople from embracing growth and transformation.
Change is indeed difficult. Mayor Rishi. But denial and selective perception only prolong the struggle. Growth happens when we confront uncomfortable truths and not hide from them.
Precisely, Your Honor. The colors that were emerging in Pleasantville, and the townspeople, it symbolized the emotional breakthrough that they had. They didn't know that they had these colors, these emotions in them. At first, they did resist it. You did resist. The entire town resisted. But eventually, they started to embrace. They started to learn more about themselves. They started to learn about stuff they didn't know. They started to learn about things beyond their enclosed space.
Well said. I hereby find Mayor Rishi and the townspeople guilty, not of malice, but of relying on outdated defense mechanisms. It's time to embrace the colors of growth and change. Close.
And they all lived happily ever after while trotting off into the sunset, holding hands.
Good evening, everyone. Today, we'll explore the concept of the id from the Freudian psychoanalysis and see how it manifests in the movie Pleasantville. But before diving in, Shadin here will help us unpack this. Shadin, could you remind us of what the id represents?
Sure. The id is the part of the psyche that operates on the pleasure principle. It's impulsive and it seeks immediate gratifications of basic drives like hunger, sex, and aggression.
Perfect. Now let's link this to Pleasantville. The movie begins in a black and white idyllic town where everything is orderly and perfect. How would you describe the societal norms there, Shadin?
The society in Pleasantville is all about control and repression. People follow routines, avoid conflicts, and suppress any intense emotions or desires. It's like a super ego, all about rules and morality.
Exactly. The town's suppression mirrors the dominance of the superego. But what happens when the siblings, David and Jennifer, arrive and start introducing change?
Well, Jennifer especially shakes things up. She challenges the rigid norms by expressing her desires, like introducing romance and sexuality to the town.
Right, and that's where we see the id come alive. The color transforms into the movie and symbolizes this awakening of primal instinct. When characters give into their desires, whether it's through art, love, or rebellion, they literally turn colorful.
So, the id is represented by the emergence of color in the black and white world?
Exactly. Think of Betty Parker, for instance. Initially, she's the typical 1950s housewife bound by societal expectations, but when she embraces her sexuality and self-expression, she turns colorful.
Oh, I see. So the color isn't just aesthetic, it symbolizes the breaking free of repression and letting the id drive.
That's right. But remember, the movie isn't saying that the id is inherently good or bad. It's about the balance. The town's transition to color reflects a balance between the id, desire, the ego, the reality, and the superego, which is the morality.
That's fascinating. So, how do David and Jennifer fit into this framework?
Great question. Jennifer, with her impulsive and desire for instant gratification, clearly represents the id. She introduces chaos and change by following her instincts and breaking societal norms.
And David?
David is the ego. He is the one trying to balance Jennifer's impulsive actions with the town's strict rules. He navigates between the rebellious energy of the id and the suppressive control of the superego.
So David acts as a mediator?
Exactly. He helps the town transition from rigid conformity to embracing change, but in a way that doesn't completely overthrow structure. His actions show that how the ego works to find a realistic and harmonious path forward.
And the town itself, as you said earlier, represents the superego.
Yes, the town's initial black and white state with a strict moral code and resistance to change is the embodiment of superego. It's all about maintaining order and adhering to societal expectations, even if it means repressing individuality and desires.
That's such an interesting dynamic. The interplay between David, Jennifer, and town really mirrors Freud's model of the psyche.
Absolutely, and this dynamic is what makes Pleasantville such a rich text for psychological and philosophical analysis. Thanks for diving into this with me, Shadin, and thank you everyone for watching.
Come in. Hello, Mateus.
Hello.
It's so nice to see you again. How have you been feeling since our last session?
Same, I guess.
Okay. It's hard to put feelings into words. Let's start small. How was your week?
It's the same as usual. School's fine. Soccer's okay. I'm just fine.
You've mentioned fine quite a lot today, but I wonder if there's something beneath that. Can we talk about what's been on your mind?
My parents, they got divorced, and it's been ruining my whole mood.
That makes sense. You're trying to protect yourself from the pain. Sometimes our minds do that by repressing certain feelings or memories. Do you feel like you've been pushing those thoughts away lately?
Probably. I don't really like to think about it. If I keep thinking about it, I get more sad. So I try to forget about it.
Okay.
It's always on my mind.
Okay. Repression often works like that. We push feelings down, but yet they find other ways to surface, like in dreams or unexpected emotions. Do you notice when you feel the most angry or upset?
When I see my mom or my dad, they act like everything's fine, like They're acting like they just got a divorce, you know? It makes me so angry. Like, I wish I was like 7 or like 8 and I could just go back to my room, not care about anything, and just like, play with my Legos or do something else, you know? Not have to worry about anything.
Like when you were a kid.
Yes.
That's called regression, Mateus. It's a self-defense mechanism that we often use when we face something overwhelming. We sometimes return to old behaviors or activities from a time when we felt safer. Playing with Legos might feel comforting because it reminds you of a simpler time when both your parents were home and happy. Makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. But it's so stupid. Like, take a look at me. Like, I'm almost an adult.
It's not stupid at all, Mateus. It's your way of coping. And recognizing these behaviors is a step toward understanding how you feel. Have you tried talking with your parents about how the divorce has affected you?
No, they're just like pretending everything's fine. Like, I just don't want to make it worse than it already is.
I see. You're protecting them, even though you're hurting. That's a lot to carry on. Your own. Maybe we can practice how to have these conversations here, together. What do you think?
I don't know. Maybe it'll help, I guess.
Okay. That's a valid fear. But remember, you don't have to go through this alone. We'll take it step at a time. For now, let's focus on how you can express your feelings in a way that makes it feel safe for you.
Okay. I'll try.
Okay. That's all I ask. You're already doing so much by being here and opening up. You're stronger than you think, Mateus, and you do matter.
Thanks, Dr. Shannon.
Anytime, Mateus.
Thank you.
Mateus's scene relates to David from the movie Pleasantville, where David's family dynamics play a significant role in shaping his behavior and emotional struggles. At the start of the film, David lives in a broken home with his mother preoccupied by her own challenges and his father absent, leaving him feeling neglected and powerless. This lack of stability drives David to seek comfort in the predictable, idolized world of the 1950s TV show Pleasantville. Regression becomes his defense mechanism as he escapes into the safe simplicity of the show, avoiding the uncertainty and pain of his real life. Repression also plays a role, as David buries his feelings of weakness and focuses on maintaining the perfect Pleasantville world. David says to Mayor Bob, "But see, that's just the point. It can't stop at once because it's in you, and you can't stop something that's inside you." This moment reflects David's growth as he accepts imperfection and faces reality, breaking free from the defense mechanisms that once trapped him. A psychoanalytic perspective can further illuminate this progression. As noted in critical theory today, when we look at the world through a psychoanalytic lens, we see that it's comprised of individual human beings, each with a psychological history that begins in the childhood experiences in the family and each with patterns of adolescence and adult behavior that are a direct result of that early experience. This framework helps to understand how David's early family environment contributes to his struggle with identity and his eventful path toward self-acceptance.
Think about the scene where the black and white world starts turning into color. That's sublimation in action.
Okay, wait, how? Sublimation is all about taking something unacceptable and redirecting an unacceptable behavior into something more socially acceptable.
When the characters start expressing themselves, like painting, reading, banned books, stuff like that, or even falling in love, they're channeling their repression into creative or emotional outlets. That's why they're literally lit up with color.
Oh, so like when
Bill Johnson
started painting instead of repressing emotions?
Yes. Her art becomes this huge act of self-expression. She's not just doing it to paint, she's reclaiming a part of herself, you know? Like, that's sublimation, turning pent-up frustration or desire into something more meaningful.
Yeah, and then she literally changes color. That part was so cool.
But what about Bud? He doesn't seem as colorful right away.
Because his arc is just a little bit slower. At first, he's all about keeping the status, you know? But like when he starts standing up for himself and others, like defending the library, that's his way of sublimating his fears into action.
So fighting for books makes you colorful.
Kind of, but it's not really the books, it's the idea of freedom and expression. So everyone in Pleasantville starts off repressed, but when they channel their desires into something more constructive, they evolve.
That's the whole point of the movie. The color presents growth, psychological, emotional, and creativity.
So Pleasantville is basically a sublimation masterpiece.
Who knew psychoanalysis could make a movie this deep?
All right, class. Great discussion. Fantastic. Let's bring it back and wrap up the connections between Freud theories and the film.
Let's get back to work.
Good one.
Why do we sublimate? It's more than just survival, it's a search for meaning, a way to reconcile who we are with who we're allowed to be. Freud believed that our deepest desires, often deemed inappropriate or chaotic, could find new life in art, love, or passion. It's not about suppression, it's about transformation. In Pleasantville, the black and white world was safe, predictable, and restrained, but safety has a cost. It erases individuality, stifles dreams, and suffocates the soul. As the characters began to color their world, they weren't just changing their surroundings, they were finding themselves. Take, for example, Bill Johnson, a diner owner with a passion for art, as he begins to explore his creative potential when the world around him starts transforming into color. One pivotal moment occurs when Betty Parker, a housewife discovering her own identity, asks Bill what his favorite painting is. His response, "I didn't paint it yet," signifies not only his untapped artistic potential, but also his deepening personal connection with Betty. This moment captures the essence of their shared transformation as Bill paints Betty in color, symbolizing her journey towards self-expression and breaking free from the rigid roles that define her in the grayscale world. And isn't that the heart of sublimation? The act of turning what might have been destructive into something life-affirming. The artist pouring heartache into a masterpiece. The activist channeling anger into change. The quiet soul finding voice in the written word. Pleasantville reminds us of the beauty that lies beyond repression. A world in color isn't more vivid, it's more honest. When we dare to sublimate, we don't just reshape the world around us, we redefine ourselves, finding light where there was once only shadow. So why do we sublimate? Because it lets us paint our truth across the blank canvas of life. And in doing so, we become the artists of our own humanity.